Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Leaderonomics Show. Today we have with us Paul Gustavson. He is an organizational design architect, also founder of the firm OPD. We talked to Paul today about leadership and engagement in the workplace. And what Paul says is that we shouldn't be focusing so much on building a team with a great leader. Rather, he says, we should be building teams of leaders, which happens to be the title of his new book. So let's cut to the interview to find out what Paul has to say. So we're here today with Paul Gustavson, all the way from America. We have the great privilege of having him here. Thank you so much for your time.
Great to be with you. Thank you very much.
So, Paul, I understand you are, I love the way you describe yourself. You're an organizational design architect. Yes. How did you get into this field?
Well, that's a great question. When I was a little kid growing up, my father was an engineer and my mom was a nurse. And I realized that whatever happened at work with my parents actually came home. So if
true.
it was a good day, good things happen.
Yes.
If it was not a good day,
Nothing's right at home.
nothing's right at home. So when I visited with a vocational counselor in our high school, he said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to help create great places for people to work." Because all I knew was what happened at home because of what happened at work. He said, "No, I mean, did you want to be an engineer, an accountant? Did you want?" I said, "No, I want to learn where to create great places to people who work." He said, "Well, good luck. Go off to school." And the same thing happened in school. They said, "Well, why don't you take general education credits? If you take all these different courses." And it wasn't until I was a senior that I took a class and I said, "This is it.
Yeah.
Where do I learn?" And they said a brand new program called Organizational Behavior had just started in the Graduate School of Management at Brigham Young University. And they had brought professors in from Harvard and Berkeley and a lot of different places. And it was amazing.
Fantastic. And so you've been doing this for how many years now?
So it will be almost 40 years next year.
Wow, fantastic.
So I've been learning a lot.
Milestones all along the way.
I love the experience.
And so let's talk a little bit about, so we've got your book here, it's called A Team of Leaders. And so I want to ask you about the title actually. So you're saying companies don't just need to build teams, they need to build teams of leaders.
That's correct.
What do you mean by that?
So it's sort of two things, if I may, in terms of framing it. We talked earlier about this notion of what happens at work comes home.
Yes.
Well, the Gallup people, which are famous in terms of their research, that they published in their 2013 report that only 30% of the employees in organizations feel engaged. 70% not engaged or disengaged.
Yeah.
That's right. So if you think about that, they equated that to, in the US alone, as $550 billion of waste. Meaning you're leaving that on the table. So if you think about that in a regard, you're thinking, we have a lot of opportunity to grow. On the other side, the flip side is the notion that we're saying is leadership isn't a single role. It isn't one person. Leadership is a set of activities that actually can be shared.
Right. Okay. So we're separating it from the person. But at the same time, there are some people who maybe don't want to be called leaders. They just want to follow instructions. So how does that work?
Well, you know, what's interesting about that, and I'll just give you a philosophical point, is that many of us, and in fact most people they will get up and they'll go to work on their own. Nobody has to call them. They take initiative on their own.
Yes.
They plan their own meals. They buy clothes that they want. They choose the movies, theater, dance, whatever it was. So I think there's a little leadership in all of us. And so I'm not compelling people to do that. What I'm suggesting is create an environment where people feel safe, where people can exercise those leadership activities, because they already do it back home.
And so if I were to ask you, what would be your definition of a leader? Could you fill in that sentence? A leader is?
A leadership tasks are things like emphasizing the purpose or meaning of the work that we're doing. A leadership task might be being clear about what are the results or outcomes that we want to actually produce. Could be in terms of satisfying customers, could be a financial result, could be an employee engagement result, or some operational measure. But a leadership task is being clear about what the objective is that we want to achieve. A leadership task could be what's the work that we're going to do, the work process that we're going to do. A leadership task could be running a meeting. Could be, I give an illustration in terms of a family. Imagine the family planning a holiday and doing. So the leadership task could be, where should we go? Or even before where, what is it that we would like to accomplish as a family in wherever it is we go? What are options where we could go? How do we gather information about that? How do we plan? So leadership has to do with the activities that are associated with the direction setting and facilitating that. It could be facilitating a meeting. It could be reviewing some results and saying, here's what the data says from our customers. Here's what the data says from. So what we do is we look at, again, what are leadership tasks, which are different than sort of the doing. The doing. So if you were thinking about, you had a bakery, for example. So the actual making of the cake, or whatever beautiful, wonderful thing it was that you would be producing, that's the activity. But the leadership activity is so what kinds of cakes do we want? What kind of customers do we want to work with? What kind of goals do we want to have for us as a team?
Yes.
Talking about who ought to do what and making decisions around that. So those are sort of leadership tasks, whether it's in a family or when it's in a work setting.
Yeah. So in a sense, a shared ownership, and everybody's working towards the same outcome, which ties very nicely to what you call level 5 teams. So you talk about 5 stages of team development.
Yes.
So you have teams at level 1 that may be, like you say, more centered around one particular leader giving instructions, and then level 5, which may be more like what you just described here. Am I right in understanding?
That's correct.
Yes.
That's correct.
And so how would you move, maybe tell us more what a level 1 team looks like.
Okay, great. So level 1 is where the formal leader deals with each one of the individuals on the team one-on-one.
Yes.
Here, I'd like you to do this, I'd like you to do this, what do you think? But the interaction is mostly one-on-one between that. The move to level 2 is this is in a team setting. So you and I might be teammates, and there might be a leader who is a formal leader who's giving information that both of us are hearing at the same time. And we might say, oh, maybe we ought to collaborate, but it's clear that leader. A shift occurs from 2 to 3. At 3, a few of the team members step up and say, oh, I can do what the leader is doing. That would free him or her up to do some higher order work. So a couple people step up, and what they're doing is what they saw the leader do in stage 2 or stage 1. The big shift there is a mental shift from leadership being a single role to leadership can be shared.
Yes.
So a few step up. Stage 4 is a wonderful one where the leader's role changes from being the one who directs, even with a few stepping up, to one who is a coach, because you have a number of the team members who are stepping up, and they're running the team meeting, they're looking at the results here, they're doing this, they're doing that. They're doing things that they saw the team leader do before. The team leader is coaching them, but the team leader now has opportunity to do higher order work that they never had to do when they were at stage 1, 2, or 3. And as you said, stage 5, is where everyone's stepping up. They can do multiple things. They're achieving great results. They're benchmarking. They're sharing their knowledge outside of their group. And the leader could actually go on vacation and the work still gets done.
Shock horror.
Shock.
What a dream.
That's right. But of course, they're working on higher order work. They can manage multiple teams. Yes. There are a lot of wonderful things happen. But could you imagine the engagement when we talk about the 30%? You know, that at stage 5, you're really engaged.
Yeah.
This is a great place because you're feeling ownership,
yes,
accountability, you're sharing knowledge, you're learning new things. So what we did was we just said, maybe what we found in our consultancy is if people know that there's points along a continuum, they can go, oh, well, here's where we are, and I think we could get there.
Yeah.
And then they could say, team leader, could you help us? We'll do this. This is what you, and you can set marks to do that. Great things happen.
Yeah, which leads to my next question. How do we get there? So say someone's watching this and their team right now is at level 1. How would they move that team forward through 2 through to 5? How would that work?
So an easy response that says, I hear there's a great book where you can read about this.
Yes, it's called
A Team of Leaders. Besides that, I think that one of the things that is very helpful is if a leader can make a list of the activities the leader does. And I've oftentimes done that with a team. I've said, leader, why don't you make a list of the things that you've done, that you do as a leader? And which are the things that you think add the most value? And which are the things that you think the team, given the proper training, opportunity, could begin to do? And then I go to the team itself. And I say, team, you've been watching the formal leader do a number of these things. What are the things that you think you could begin to do?
Right.
And so with the idea of the two parties sitting down and saying, oh, you think that we could do, we also think we could do that. Could you teach us or model for us what that is? And we can do that. By doing that, that frees you up to spend more time on those things that you said are higher. And so one of the things it is a calibration of a list of activities that we can say, so where are we today, and what do we think we could work on, and what do we need to develop that? So the contract, if you may, the social contract between the team member and their leader is, I'm willing to step up, learn and apply and that, but I need to have a good role model, understand the principles and best practices, and give me feedback because I want to learn.
Yeah, and surely recruitment plays a big part in that as well, because you then need people who want to be continually stepping up. Is that
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, one of the things that I found over my career, when people say, if there was only one thing that you hired somebody on, and of course that would never be the best thing, but what's that one thing that you've learned? And I've said that it's that spirit of inquiry, the ability to learn. Because my experience is if they have a thirst for learning, they want to learn, and they're engaged in wanting to learn, that you can teach them whatever, because everything that I know, actually I learned from somebody else.
Yeah.
But if they have that, so people have said, oh, gosh, that resonates. So what would you do? So here's my secret sauce. The secret sauce is if I'm in an interview with someone and I'm getting to know them, we're relaxed, we're talking that, I'll say, I'm curious, want to know a little bit more about you. What was the last book that you read?
Team of Leaders.
Oh, that's a good, so why did you read it?
Because I knew I was going to meet you today and I wanted to find out more about what you do.
Oh, good. So were there any things that sparked for you in terms of that?
Alignment, the stages of team development, seeing how they could apply to my situation.
So have you shared anything that you've read with a colleague or a spouse or
briefly, actually, about 20 minutes ago.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So it's already done. Yep.
So what I do is I try to see, so what have you, so if people on their own have learned, there's a reason why, that they've then gone to the application. Well, I shared it with this person, and they said, well, have you read this? And we started a discussion, and we said, how can we apply that? Then you go, I've got somebody.
Yeah.
But if you ask the question, and it's like
blank. Yes. And then, you know, it kind of, you hear a pin drop. And
that's right.
Yeah. Okay, so learning agility, you heard it here, is very important in recruitment.
Very important.
That's great. I want to tap into another element that you touch on in your book, and you call it organizational design. And I love this premise that you state. You say organizations are perfectly designed to get the results that they get. That's right. It's brilliant. It's simple, and it makes sense. The results that you get are a result of the organization's design. Are we missing something? Is it too simple for us that we haven't been getting this?
That is a powerful, I coined that phrase years ago as I was helping organizations. I was looking, how could I help them understand? Because you talked about my title being an organizational architect. And it just hit me. Organizations are perfectly designed to get the results that they get. Yeah. If you don't like the results, then you got to change the design. You know, we've heard Einstein's quote that insanity is doing the same thing the same way and
expecting different results.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So I think it's a great phrase, but there's what it really commands there is a framework to kind of say, so if we are perfectly designed, so let's go back to the only 30% being engaged. Yes. Then what is it that's causing the 70% not? What are the design elements that are causing that? And so I argue in one, if you're at stage 1 and 2, your workforce isn't very engaged, so you're getting what you designed.
Yeah, and that's just one of the elements. You touch on quite a few other elements.
There are 10 different categories of choices that I think are really important.
So does that include culture and process? What are the 10 elements? Could you list them briefly?
The 10 elements for me is your first one is your purpose statement. So a purpose statement is a mission if you have a purpose. The second one are what are the principles that guide your values that guide the organization. Third is what are the strategies. So what do we say yes to and what do we say no to as strategy. Fourth is what is it we measure. So there have been organizations that I've worked with that what they measure is talk time of people on customer service reps. Well, that drives a certain behavior, whereas if you measure customer value, that drives a whole different. Then, as you just said, there are 6 systems. One of those systems is your processes. How do you go about doing whatever it is that you have? Another one is your structure. How do you choose to organize around your process? A third one there in the systems is what are the decisions and where are the decisions made and what information is used. The next one is what I call people systems, which says what are the attributes that you're looking to hire, like we talk about that learning agility. How do you attract them? How do you select them? How do you onboard them? How is work assigned? How does movement occur? How is performance managed? What do we do in terms of careers? The last 2 are the reward system. So we have both the formal and informal reward and recognition systems. And the last one is a renewal system. Right. How does the organization go about renewing itself? Just like our automobiles need to be tuned up, important relationships need to be renewed, the same thing happens in teams and organizations.
And how often should organizations be reviewing these 10 elements?
Well, a great time to review those is as you review your results. Because if we are perfectly designed to get the results, so let's imagine that you got your customer stat data, on a monthly basis. Certainly you would want to understand what choices are driving that. If you were looking at operational performance, you might look a little bit quicker in terms of, so why did we get the results, either plus or minus, that we had? So the great thing is if you can build that into a team or into a culture, it becomes, this is just the way we think, as opposed to, oh, well, we need to do an event, let's go off and do that.
Yes.
Certainly in terms of your strategic planning and your operation planning, you know, the 1 year or 3 year, those are deep dives. But other than that, it ought to be part of looking at how the team functions.
Just part and parcel of what's in the back of your mind every day.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
I just want to finish with a question on alignment. So you mentioned in your book that there could be misalignment between, even for example, systems and communicated objectives.
That's right.
How do you correct misalignments in a company?
Well, the first thing that I do is I talk about these 10 categories of choices and saying the most difficult thing that organizations can have is that notion of alignment. So I'm making people aware.
Yes.
And then having an appreciation. And what I might do in terms of appreciation is I might give them an example. So for example, I worked with an energy company that said, we want teamwork. So they sent all of their managers off for a team building session.
Yes.
You know, they went to the moon and survived the desert and, you know, the ropes courses and trust falls and all of that stuff.
Yes.
And then what happened is they came back. And they did an employee survey, and they found that teamwork was worse than it ever was. So they called us in and they said, we don't understand. We invested in this. Yeah. What happened? So what we did was we went through the 10 design choices that we just talked about. And what we looked at was in the April timeframe, the managers went off for a session where they rated and ranked all of the employees in the organization on a zero-sum basis. So if you have 100 people, somebody was said, you're number one, and somebody was told they were number 100.
Yeah.
And so that one design element threw all of the other investment out.
Sure.
So one way that I do it is I tell stories about that, and people go, oh, yeah. And so then we say, so are there any things here where we're sending a mixed message? You know, it'd be like, you know, did mom or dad ever send mixed messages? You know, and that's something that is really important to work at. The metaphor that I use is laser light versus broken light. Laser light has enormous power because it's
focused.
It's focused.
Concentrated. Yes. Yes. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Paul. We really appreciate you sharing your insights with us.
Thank you. This was great.
And so we've had Paul Gustavson here today on the Leaderonomics Show. Thank you for being with us.